the way we have to deal with it, and we have cuts of ethics almost everywhere today. But it's not only about this. When it comes to professional ethics, we have to talk about the way we deal with our profession, the way we deal with our work, and the way we deal with humanity, meaning society. So it's three sides. It's individual, fardi, it's the company, it's the business, and then it's the society. And then we have to get this in our mind when it comes to try to implement ethics. It's not just to think about work, our profession. And one of the most important problems that we have today, it's two things. When it comes to knowledge, is what we call fragmentation or partitioning of knowledges. And this is not only happening in the Muslim majority countries, it's happening everywhere. It's one of the main crises in the West. When it comes to having people very, very professional, very, very sharp in their respective fields, but there is no connection. So ethics is lost in between. So you are ethical in your work, but there is no ethics in the relationship between knowledge. So you deal with the means, you forget the goals and the ends. So this is where this holistic, comprehensive approach is very important. When it comes to Islam and when it comes to all the religions, if we don't have this upstream, having the big picture, we might be lost by being ethical in details, but not ethical in goals. So that's the problem. We are facing this every day. So this is one side of the picture. And then when it comes to the fragmentation of knowledge, we have fragmentation of professions and professionalisms. And this is where we also have to reconnect. So our work when it comes to ethics is to think ethics as a duty to reconnect knowledge and work, knowledge and action, action among our different spheres of competency in that field. So this was before even my introduction. I started with my introduction in that field, saying three things that I want to highlight during this discussion. Is three things. The first is try to understand ethics from an Islamic perspective, but also from a transdisciplinary and trans-religious or philosophical approach. What do we mean by ethics and what are we talking about? The second is to come to something which is reducing the scope, saying what are we dealing with when we speak about professional ethics. And then the third part will be about meaning and applications, which is the second half of the question that I have this evening. When it comes to ethics and what we have in Arabic is the word al-akhlaq, and it's, there are multiple meanings. We don't only have one meaning, and the problem is that what is understood in English as ethics, it's different from sometimes what we understand as morality, and it's also even different from what we have in Arabic as akhlaq. We don't have the clear, it's not a clear translation. So what I'm going to do is not to just, because we don't have time, it's not to waste time with translation, but at least to come with three dimensions that have to be kept in mind when we speak about ethics. The first one has to do with values. The second has to do with virtues, what we call in Arabic al-fada'il, which is what are the virtues that we are talking about. And then the third part is also understood with akhlaq, is good behavior, good character. And this is the way Aisha radiallahu anha, when she spoke about the Prophet ﷺ, saying, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, what she meant that his character, his manners were in fact the translation of the Islamic principles. So meaning the way he was behaving was the translation of the principles that you find in the Quran. Meaning here that what she had in mind is the principles are in fact to be seen in the behavior. So this is something which is the third part of our understanding. Now when it comes to values, one of the most important discussion, and for every one of you, that should be a question that you have in your daily life. It's an intellectual question, but at the same time is the way you define your identity. What are the sources of your ethical values? That's a very critical question, because at the end, you can take from the society, you can take from the culture, but if you are connected to a religion, if you say, I believe in God, and a mu'min, meaning if you belong to, or you feel that you belong to a religion, or you take a decision, there is something which is clear from an Islamic perspective, is that the sources should be connected to what you believe in. So the first is consistency. That you have in a very simple verse that it's coming very often in the Quran, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, meaning آمَنُوا, al-iman, that you believe in God, that there is something which is you trust Him. It means that the very moment you say, I believe in Him, you say, what is coming from Him are the values that I'm going to respect. Values and rules. And in fact, there should be no rules without value. So it should be the translation behind every rule, there should be a value. And even if you don't get it straight away with your mind, sometimes your heart is responding, and sometimes your ignorance is responding. Meaning by this that through a rule that you don't understand, it could be that God is teaching you, Allah is teaching you humility and intellectual humility, what we call al-ubudiyya, meaning I believe in it because it's coming from Him. So the sources, it's very important. And you have this in the Islamic tradition from the very beginning. You find this in everything which has to do with al-fuqaha. It's from where do your values come? They're saying from al-Quran wa Sunnah. So the Quran, which is the first source, is full. And by the way, the first things that you get in the Quran is a set of values and set of principles that you rely on. And then this is your source. They're saying it's coming from there. So you have trends within Islam saying, in fact, the only real source should be the Quran, and then its translation is what the Prophet ﷺ said, did, or approved, which is the meaning of a sunnah. And by the way, it's also what he did. Not only the rules that you find in the hadith is the behavior. So a sunnah, it's a wider concept that only rules, it's a way of life. It's a way. And you see within his life. So these are two sources that should be, when it comes to Islam, references that you should understand. And saying, and then the Prophet ﷺ is saying something which is very important. He's explaining to us in ethical terms his role. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to achieve the good behavior. Saying, what I came with is to achieve, meaning, but there were things before me that I am confirming. So I don't have everything, I'm confirming everything which is good. Meaning here that it's very important for us to come to another verse saying, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We made you tribes and nations in order for you to know each other. What does it mean? It might be that in other tribes or in other nations or in other religions, you will find ethical values that you have to respect. Why? Because He came to confirm them. He's not saying, I'm coming with everything. He's saying, I'm confirming and adding and achieving. So that we find something which is very important in our understanding is that Al-Quran is the first source. Sunnah, the tradition is the second. But what is everywhere done in cultures is something that you have to take into account as well when it's good, when it does not contradict some of our principles. Adding to this, a source that was debated by scholars and philosophers in Islamic tradition, and don't reduce this to something which is alien to us, which in fact, do we have values that we can get out of our mind? Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, a scholar from the 12th century, is saying something which is very important when he came. In fact, he wrote a book against the philosophers, but everything coming from his refutation and his rejection of a type of philosophy, it's done in a philosophical way. So he was a philosopher targeting wrong way of doing philosophy, wrong way of relying on the minds. But he was saying something that we have to keep in our mind as something which is important. Ar-Risalatu, talking about the Quran, wahyun khariji. It's the message, the Quran is an external revelation. Wal-aqlu wahyun dakhili. The intellect is an internal revelation, meaning God gave you intellect for you to find values. You have to use it. So it's not faith against reason, it's faith enlightening reason and reason confirming what is coming out of faith. Meaning, for us, wherever we are, we have to use our minds to identify values that are connected to culture, connected to specific